Hey guys, in this video the amazing Mr. B is going to be taking you through functions, how to use them, what they actually mean, because sometimes they can look a little bit funny. We're going to be going through it at 3 different levels, so 15 questions in total, and you can decide where you feel the most comfortable starting this video, and you can work through it at your own pace. Don't forget, over on my website there are thousands more multiple choice questions to help you, a massive workbook for you to download, and the whole topic videos to help you revise.
We'll take a look at functions. Now, functions start off as a more technical way to represent substitution, but then they'll quickly move on to more difficult things. So, looking at the first easy question, we have f of 2, and then we have f of x equals 7x take away 6. Now, the notation can be very, very confusing, but all it means is that you can see that in the question, the 2 is inside the brackets. In the second part of the question, we've got an x inside the brackets. Now, that is your substitution. And all we're going to do is swap all of the x's, including the x in the expression, with the 2. So what I'm going to do is go write all of this out again. So I'm going to write f of x, and again I'm swapping the x with 2. Then write out the rest equals 7. Remember, when you have a letter and a number next to each other in algebra, you're multiplying them. So swapping the x with a 2, but it's not 72, it's 7 times 2. And then we've got the takeaway 6 at the end, and we are following big math rules here as well, so we're going to do the multiplication first. Now, once we've written our expression out again, and we've swapped all the x's for our number, which is a 2, we can start to work it out. So 7 times 2 is 14. So we've got 14 take away 6, and 14 take away 6 is 8. And that's our answer. F of 2 is 8. Moving on to question 2. So we'll try and find f of 0. And finding f of 0 can be quite common when you're doing functions on more complicated bits of maths. And our function is f of x is equal to 3x plus 12. So we're taking the 0 in f of 0 and we're swapping it with the. So we're going to write that out. We're not really doing any maths, we're just writing out a substitution, but you're showing any examiner exactly what you're trying to do in case you make any mistakes later. So swap the x with a 0. Then we've got 3. That's been multiplied by x, which is 0. And then we're adding on the 12. So then we start to work it out using big math rules. So 3 times 0 is 0. And then we add on the 12. So our answer 0 plus 12 is 12. And if you do have f of 0, it's got the nice effect of anything involving an x, any terms with an x, just becomes 0, because if you multiply 0 by any number, you get 0. Moving on to question 3. So we've got f of 6. So that 6 is replacing in f of x, is replacing the x, and in x squared minus 5, the 6 is replacing that x. So we're going to write out our substitution. So function of 6 is equal to, then we've got another x, that'll be a 6 again. It's x squared, so it'll be 6 squared minus 5. So now we can work this out. Using big math rules, we're going to do the squaring first. So 6 squared is 36, and we're taking away the 5. 36 take away 5 will give us 31. Moving on to question 4. Now the function is -2, and it is quite common to get negative numbers in these. -2. Then we have x squared minus 7, so that'll be -2 squared minus 7. So I'll write this out. F of -2 is equal to -2 squared take away 7. So now we can work this out. Using BIDMAS, we'll do the squaring first. So it's negative 2 squared. So negative 2 multiplied by negative 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And a negative multiplied by a negative will give us a positive number. So it's actually a positive 4. And we're taking away 7. And 4 take away 7 is negative 3. Now moving on to the final question. So we're at f of 8. So we've got f of x, that'll be f of 8. And we've got 9x squared, so that'll be 9 times 8 squared. So let's write that out. We have f of 8. And we're going to have 9. Remember, we're multiplying when we have a letter and a number next to each other. So it'll be times 8. And then that will be squared. Again, we're going to follow BIDMAS rules. So we'll do 8 squared first, which is 64. Note that I'm writing 64 directly underneath the 8 squared because the 9 multiplied by has still got to be in the same order. Then we're going to do 9 times 64. Now, it's possible you'd be expected to use a column method for this, but using a calculator to speed it up, that should give you 576. Moving on to the medium questions. Now we have fractions involved, but it's going to work the same way. So when finding f of 20, all we're going to do is read through our function. So f of x will be f of 20, and then x plus 20 will be 20 plus 20, and then we're dividing by 5. So our first job is to rewrite our function with the substitution done. So swapping x for 20, then starting our fraction. Again, x is being swapped for a 20, adding 20 to it, and it's all being divided by 5. So now we can start to solve. So 20 plus 20 is 40, and that is over 5. Remember that fractions and divides are the same thing. So we've got 40 over 5. That means 40 divided by 5, which is 8. So f of 20 is 8. Moving on to question 2. So again, we've got f of 6. So we're swapping x with 6. So f of x, f of 6, equals to x over 3. So that'd be 6 over 3, take away 13. So let's write that out. F of 6, we've got our fraction, 6 over 3, take away 13. So let's work out the fraction. 6 over 3 is the same as 6 divided by 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, and we're taking away 13. And then for our final answer, 2 take away 13 is going to give us negative 11. Moving on to question 3. So we have f of 2. So we have f of x equals 6x minus 12 take away 3. So our first step is to swap those x's with 2's. So we have f of 2 is equal to 6 multiplied by 2. Again, remembering numbers and letters next to each other, it's multiplication. Add 12. And then all of that is divided by 3. So when we move on to solve this, the first thing that we need to do is we need to just make sure our fraction, the numerators and the denominators only have one number. So on the top row, we've got 6 times 2, which is 12. And then we're adding 12 to that and dividing by 3. 12 plus 12 is 24. So that's being divided by 3. And 24 divided by 3 is 8. And also notice doing it one step at a time, so make any mistakes, the examiner knows exactly what mistake I've made, and I can be given the maximum number of method acts. For question 4, we've got f of 6. So we've got f of x equals x squared plus 12 divided by 6. So we'll write that out again, but we're going to replace all the x's with a 6. So we've got f of 6, 6 squared plus 12, all divided by 6. So when we set to solve it, you use BIDMAS rules, indices first. 6 squared is 36. And we're adding on 12 and divided by 6. 36 plus 12 is 48. So again, I'm just working out the numerators and denominators first and making sure I've got a single number for my numerator in this question. And then that's over 6. And then we can finish this off. 48 divided by 6 is going to give us 8. Now moving on to the final question. Now we've got a negative number, we want f of negative 18. We'll substitute that into f of x equals x divided by 6, take away 8. So do the substitution first. We've got f of negative 18. And that's equal to negative 18 over 6, take away 8. So we can start to solve. Use BIDMAS rules, we'll do the fraction first because divide comes before subtraction. 18 divided by 6 is 3, but a negative 18 divided by 6 is going to give us a negative 3. Then we're going to take away 8. So negative 3 take away 8 is going to give us negative 11. When we say a minus and a minus is a plus with adding and subtracting, then they've got to be touching each other, and they're not, so we're not using that rule. It's just going to be negative 11. Now, moving on to the hard questions, it looks like it's more of the same, but look at the wording of the question. It says solve. Now, in the easy and medium questions, it said find. And when it said find, it replaced the x with the number it wanted to substitute with. Whereas the hard questions, it still says f of x, and it says equals a number. Now, this is the example about why function notation can be very confusing. What this is saying is f of x is now equal to 15 in question 1. So then when we have our function, we're swapping f of x with 15. So let's try that and see what it looks like. So f of x is equal to 15, so we're going to write 15 down instead of f of x. And that is equal to 13x plus 2. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like solving equations. And we've got the word solve there. So actually this is a solving equations question. So again, there's very little kind of in the way of explanation or notation here. It's a very subtle difference in the question if it's a substitution or an equation. So let's solve it. So I'm assuming you're comfortable with equations. So we've got 13x plus 2. Aim is to have x on its own, and it's got two things with it. It's got the times 13 and it's got the plus 2. It's usually easier to go through this in reverse BIDMAS order, so let's take away 2 from both sides. So on the left hand side, 15 take away 2 is going to give us 13. On the right hand side, we've not done anything with the x term, and then positive 2 take away 2 gives us 0, and that's why we chose it, to get rid of that number. So now x has only got one thing with it, 13. So we're going to do the opposite of times 13, which is divide by 13. If we divide by 13 on the right, we're going to do it to the left as well. So on the left hand side, 13 divided by 13 is 1. And on the right hand side, 13x divided by 13 will give us 1x. And again, that's why we chose it. It's just to get x on its own. So x is equal to 1. And in a way, this is a reverse question to the easy and medium questions where you're substituting, because if we found f of 1 and we substitute that into our expression, we should be getting 15 back out. Moving on to question 2. So now the function is going to be equal to 10. So we're swapping f of x with 10. So we're going to write down 10 instead of f of x, and that's equal to 18x plus 24, and it's all over 6. Now, when we've got a long fraction like this with things trapped in the numerator or denominator, we've got to try and get rid of that first. So if your numerator's got quite a few terms, our denominator's a 6, the opposite of a fraction over 6, remember fractions are divisions, the opposite of divide by 6 is multiply by 6. So we're going to multiply both sides by 6. So 10 times 6 is 60. And then if we multiply divide by 6, that fraction is going to go away. And we'll just have the numerator left over, 18x plus 24. Now it looks like what we had in question 1. So we've got a multiplication and an addition with our x. So we can take away 24 from both sides. 60 take away 24 is 36. We've done nothing with the x terms. And 24 to take away 24 is 0. That's why we chose it, to get rid of it. Now we've got 18x, so the opposite of multiply by 18 is divide by 18. So 36 divided by 18 is 2. And 18x divided by 18 is 1x. Again, that's why we chose it, just so we had 1x left over. So x is equal to 2. With question 3, f of x is 22. So we're going to swap f of x with 22. So we have 22 is equal to x squared take away 14. So x has got two things with it. It's got a take away 14, it's got a squared sign. Working reverse BIDMAS order, we're going to get rid of the minus 14 first, and the opposite of take away 14 is adding 14, which as usual we have to do to both sides in an equation. 22 plus 14 is 36. We've done nothing to the squared term yet, and negative 14 plus 14 is 0. Again, that's why we chose it. Now x has got a squared sign on it, so the opposite of squaring is square root, but we have to do that to both sides. The square root of 36, well 6 times 6 is 36, so that'll be a 6. And the square root of x squared is just going to cancel out the squared sign and leave us with x. Again, that's why we've chosen it, to get x on its own. So x is equal to 6. Moving on to question 4, f of x is negative 7. So we're swapping f of x with a negative 7. So we're going to write that out. F of x is negative 7. And it's equal to x take away 50 all over 10. So again, when you have a fraction involved, we can multiply it by the denominator to get rid of it. Multiply both sides by 10. That will give us negative 70, because negative 7 times 10 is negative 70. And then if you multiply a fraction with a denominator of 10 by 10, we're going to get rid of the denominator. So we'll just have x take away 50. Now we've got a pretty simple equation. X has got a negative 50 with it, so we're going to add 50 to both sides to get rid. Negative 70 plus 50 is negative 20. Done nothing to the x yet. And negative 50 plus 50 is 0. And actually we've got our answer already. X is equal to negative 20. Now looking at the last question. f of x is equal to negative 9. So we're going to swap f of x with a negative 9. So f of x, negative 9, is equal to x squared minus 10. So x has got two things with it, a squared sign and negative 10. It's going to be easier to get rid of the negative 10 first. Let's add 10 to both sides. Negative 9 plus 10 is 1. We haven't done anything to the x yet. And then negative 10 plus 10 is 0. That leaves x squared is equal to 1. So to get rid of the squared sign, we're going to root both sides. And the square root of 1, well, 1 times 1 is 1. If you root 1 or square 1, it stays the same. Just like if you multiply or divide by 1, you're going to still have the same number. So 1 is equal to x, or rather x is equal to 1.
Ouch! This is why in some videos I have unexplained scratches.